They were children. Yet they became the murderers of their own families. Some parents dedicate their entire lives to raising their children, never imagining that one day, their own flesh and blood would pick up a knife, a gun, and end their lives. The very ones who should have loved and protected them became their cold-blooded killers. For money. For revenge. For reasons so twisted that no one could have foreseen them. Some killed and then pretended to grieve. Some staged elaborate crime scenes to cover their tracks. But no matter how carefully they planned, justice always caught up with them. Today, we uncover 16 shocking cases where blood ties meant nothing. Where seemingly happy families became the backdrop for horrifying massacres. Will you dare to watch until the end? Welcome to Crimes Unearthed 911, where we expose real-life crime stories. If you find this content compelling, share it so more people can watch. As always, since YouTube's algorithm favors videos with high engagement, if you enjoy this video, hit the like button and leave a comment below. And if you haven't already, consider subscribing so you don't miss any future episodes. Now, let's begin. 1. Dana James Ewell murdered his entire family for an $8 million inheritance. On April 19, 1992, a horrific massacre unfolded at the Ewell family mansion in Fresno, California. 3 victims, Dale Ewell, 59, Glee Ewell, 57, and Tiffany Ewell, 24, were shot and killed inside their home. No signs of struggle. No valuables missing. The crime scene was staged as a robbery. But it was too perfect. Too calculated. Investigators quickly turned their focus to Dana James Ewell, the only surviving son, who showed no signs of grief after his family's brutal murder. Instead, he began indulging in a lavish lifestyle. Expensive cars, luxury vacations, extravagant spending. It didn't take long for detectives to ask, where was all this money coming from? As they dug deeper, they discovered Dana frequently met with his best friend, Joel Radofsich. Suspicious cash transfers were traced from Dana to Joel, and phone records revealed an alarming pattern. Dozens of calls exchanged between the two in the week of the murders, including the day of the killings. Then, a key witness came forward. Joel's girlfriend told investigators that he had confided in her about a murder plot, and Dana was the mastermind. After 3 years of relentless investigation, both Dana and Joel were arrested in March 1995. At trial, the evidence was overwhelming. Phone records proving their coordination, financial transactions showing Dana's payments, and the testimony that sealed their fate. The motive? Dana hated his father's strict control. He didn't want to wait to inherit $8 million, he wanted it now. The court handed down its final verdict: life in prison, no parole. Today, Dana James Ewell remains behind bars in a California state prison. No fortune, no freedom, and no way out. Perhaps, for the rest of his life, he will wonder if $8 million was really worth the price he paid. 2. Kipland Kinkel killed his parents, then opened fire at his school. On May 21, 1998, chaos erupted at Thurston High School in Springfield, Oregon. 2 students lay dead, 25 others were wounded. And in the midst of the bloodshed, students tackled and restrained the shooter, pinning him to the ground. His name was Kipland Kinkel. He was just 15 years old. But the horror didn't stop there. When police took him into custody and searched his home, they made a gruesome discovery: his parents, William and Faith Kinkel, were already dead. Kipland had murdered them the night before. He waited for his father to walk through the door, then shot him in the back of the head. When his mother returned shortly after, he executed her in the same way. And then, he kept going. Blasting opera music to mask the gunshots, he repeatedly stabbed their lifeless bodies, ensuring they would never get back up. Then, he sat down and wrote a manifesto filled with hatred, toward his parents, toward the world, and toward himself. The next morning, He packed a backpack full of guns and ammunition, walked into his school cafeteria, and started shooting. During questioning, Kipland showed no remorse, no tears, no fear. When asked why he did it, his chilling response was simply, "I don't know." His personal journals were even more disturbing, filled with ramblings about the voices in his head, his belief that his parents didn't deserve to live, and a hit list of future victims. Psychologists diagnosed him with paranoid schizophrenia, but that didn't change the fact that he had committed mass murder. Prosecutors pushed for the harshest sentence possible. The final verdict: 111 years in prison. No parole. Today, Kipland Kinkel remains locked away, alone with his thoughts, trapped in a prison of his own making. No more victims. No more targets. Only the voices in his head, whispering in the darkness. 3. Nicole Kasinskas killed her mother for love and freedom. On July 5, 2003, police in Nashua, New Hampshire, responded to a chilling crime scene. Jean Domenico, 44, had been savagely bludgeoned to death in her own bedroom. Blood covered the room. Yet, there were no signs of the robbery, no signs of forced entry. So who had killed her? Detectives turned to her family, and one name immediately stood out: Nicole Kasinskas, her 17-year-old daughter. But there was something wrong about Nicole's reaction. She didn't cry. She didn't panic. When asked about her mother, she simply said, "She's finally gone." Her statement didn't add up. Her demeanor was off. Investigators combed through her phone records and found that she had been in constant contact with one person, her boyfriend, Billy Sullivan, 18. When confronted, Billy broke. He confessed everything. Nicole planned it. Nicole let me in. Nicole wanted her mother dead. That night, Nicole unlocked the door, and Billy entered the house. He crept into Jean's bedroom, hammer in hand. She never saw him coming. 1 blow. 2 blows. 3. No screams. No fight. No chance to survive. Nicole stood there, watching. Silent. Both were arrested immediately. Nicole tried to shift all the blame onto Billy, but the evidence was undeniable. Texts, journal entries, and witness testimonies all pointed straight to her. At trial, the prosecutor called it what it was: a cold-blooded, calculated murder with no remorse. The verdict: life in prison. Nicole thought killing her mother would set her free. Instead, she's trapped forever, behind bars, behind regret, behind the weight of her own crime. 4. Charles Joseph Whitman, the Clock Tower Sniper. On August 1, 1966, America witnessed one of its first mass shootings. The perpetrator, Charles Joseph Whitman, a 25-year-old former Marine and a student at the University of Texas. But before he took innocent lives, he committed an even more brutal act. That morning, Whitman drove to his mother's apartment. No one knows exactly what happened inside, but when he walked out, his mother lay dead, stabbed multiple times. He then returned home, where his wife Kathleen was still asleep. This time, he picked up the knife again and stabbed her to death. No one heard her scream. No one had a chance to stop him. After methodically cleaning up, Whitman armed himself with a semi-automatic rifle, a shotgun, multiple handguns, and hundreds of rounds of ammunition. He drove to the University of Texas, climbed to the top of the 27-story clock tower, and opened fire. Pedestrians, students, bystanders. One by one, they fell. 16 people were killed. Over 30 more were wounded. Police quickly surrounded the area. Officers Ramiro Martinez and Houston McCoy made their way up the tower, carefully avoiding Whitman's gunfire. As they reached his position, they didn't hesitate. They shot and killed him on sight. An autopsy later revealed a tumor in Whitman's brain. Some experts believe it may have influenced his violent behavior. But in the end, that no longer mattered. 16 people had lost their lives at the hands of a madman. And from that day forward, America would never be the same. 5. Sarah Marie Johnson, the teen who killed for love. Bellevue, Idaho. September 2, 2003. A quiet home. A family with no enemies. Yet inside, 2 bodies lay lifeless, blood pooling on the floor. Alan and Diane Johnson, shot and killed in their own home. This was no robbery. No random attack. The killer? Their own daughter, 16-year-old Sarah Marie Johnson. She wasn't abused. She wasn't mistreated. But she couldn't accept one thing: her parents forbade her from dating an older man with a criminal record. Sarah was furious. And if they wouldn't allow the relationship, they had to die. That morning, as her parents slept, Sarah snuck into the guest house where they kept their firearms. She grabbed a .264 Winchester Magnum rifle, walked into her mother's bedroom, and pulled the trigger. Diane died instantly. Her father, Alan, was in the shower. He heard the gunshot, opened the bathroom door, only to see his daughter aiming the rifle at him. The first shot didn't kill him. He staggered forward, bleeding, trying to escape. But Sarah fired again. It was over. Her parents were dead. Sarah then ran to the neighbors, pretending to be in shock. She told them an intruder had broken in and killed her parents. But when police arrived, her story fell apart. There were no signs of forced entry. No valuables were stolen. And the murder weapon was still inside the house. The only person who could have accessed it was Sarah. When confronted, she panicked. Her story changed. She tried blaming a mysterious burglar, but the evidence told a different tale. In court, prosecutors called her actions cold-blooded and selfish. The jury agreed. The verdict: life in prison. No parole. A 16-year-old girl, willing to kill her own parents for a doomed relationship. And the price she paid? A lifetime behind bars. 6. Thomas Bartlett Whitaker, the Graduation Night Massacre. Texas, December 10, 2003. The Whitaker family gathered for a celebratory dinner, toasting to Thomas's college graduation. It was supposed to be a night of joy. A night of family. But there was one thing nobody knew: Thomas had never attended college. He had been lying for years. And tonight, he planned to end the charade with murder. After dinner, the family returned home. Waiting in the shadows was Chris Brashear, Thomas's friend and hired gunman. The moment they stepped inside, gunfire erupted. Patricia Whitaker, his mother, shot and killed instantly. Kevin Whitaker, his younger brother, had no chance to survive. Kent Whitaker, his father, critically wounded but still alive. And Thomas? He was shot as well, but only in the arm. Just enough to make himself look like a victim. When police arrived, something felt off. Thomas was too calm for someone who had just lost his family. And the deeper they investigated, the clearer it became: this wasn't a robbery. This was a setup. They soon discovered Thomas had orchestrated the entire attack, all to inherit his family's fortune. But in an unexpected twist, the one person he tried to kill, his father, pleaded for his life. Kent Whitaker, the lone survivor, begged the court to spare his son from the death penalty. Initially sentenced to execution, Thomas's punishment was later reduced to life in prison. No parole. He killed for money. But in the end, he lost everything. 7. Adam Lanza, the Massacre at Sandy Hook. December 14, 2012. Newtown, Connecticut. A seemingly ordinary morning suddenly turned into one of the darkest days in American history. Adam Lanza, a 20-year-old recluse, known for being quiet and socially withdrawn, became infamous in the most horrifying way. That morning, he entered his mother's bedroom. Nancy Lanza was still asleep. Without hesitation, he raised his Bushmaster XM15 rifle and fired 4 shots. She died instantly. But he wasn't finished. Lanza then armed himself with additional weapons, got into his car, and drove to Sandy Hook Elementary School. He walked into the building and began his massacre. 26 people were killed. Among them, 20 were children, only 6 or 7 years old. Police arrived swiftly, surrounding the school. But before they could stop him, Lanza turned the gun on himself. No one knows exactly why he did it. No suicide note, no clear explanation. Just a senseless act of mass murder. The tragedy sent shockwaves across America. Heated debates erupted over gun control laws, mental health systems, and how to prevent such atrocities in the future. But for 26 grieving families, no policy change could bring back their loved ones. And the name Adam Lanza will forever be etched into history as the perpetrator of one of the most horrifying school shootings America has ever seen. 8. Lyle and Erik Menendez, the brothers who killed for wealth. Beverly Hills, California. A luxurious mansion. A wealthy family. On August 20, 1989, police received a frantic call from 2 young men, Lyle and Erik Menendez. They claimed they had just returned home to find their parents murdered. Jose Menendez, a successful businessman, and his wife, Kitty Menendez, were found shot to death on their living room sofa. Their bodies were riddled with bullets. The crime scene was gruesome, yet something felt off. No signs of forced entry. No valuables stolen. And the 2 brothers? Suspiciously composed. Lyle and Erik initially played the role of grieving sons. They subbed in TV interviews, arranged an extravagant funeral, and then, they started spending. Exotic cars. Lavish vacations. Luxury shopping sprees. In just a few months, they burned through over $1 million of their inheritance. And that excess drew the attention of investigators. As police dug deeper, they uncovered a shocking confession. Erik, during a private therapy session, admitted to the murders. His psychologist recorded the conversation, and that was all authorities needed. The brothers were arrested. They claimed years of abuse at the hands of their father had pushed them to kill out of fear. But the jury wasn't convinced. In 1996, Lyle and Erik Menendez were sentenced to life in prison without parole. A privileged family, shattered by greed and murder. The brothers, once inseparable, are now locked away in separate prisons, never to taste freedom again. 9. Henry Chau Hoi-Leung, the son who dismembered his parents. March 1, 2013, Hong Kong. An elderly couple mysteriously vanished without a trace. Their neighbors reported that they hadn't been seen for days. But the truth was far more gruesome than anyone could have imagined. They weren't missing. They had been murdered. The killer? Their own son, Henry Chau Hoi-Leung, 29 years old. And he didn't act alone. His close friend, Si Chun-K, helped him carry out the crime. After murdering his parents in their apartment in Tai Kok Shui, Henry and Si did something chilling. They dismembered the bodies. Some remains were stuffed into plastic containers and stored in the refrigerator. Others were placed inside takeout boxes and discarded throughout the city. When police searched Henry's apartment, they opened the fridge and found the horrifying remains of his parents. Investigators discovered that Henry had meticulously planned the murders for months. His motive? Money. He wanted to inherit his parents' wealth and live a life of luxury. But instead of freedom, he found himself facing justice. The court handed down a life sentence. Today, Henry Chau Hoi-Leung remains behind bars in Hong Kong. No inheritance. No lavish lifestyle. Just the haunting reality of the monstrous crime he committed. 10. Ronald DeFeo Jr. The Amityville Massacre. November 13, 1974, Amityville, New York. A large house by the river. A picture-perfect family. and a massacre that sent shockwaves across America. A distressed call came from a young man, Ronald DeFeo Jr., 23 years old. When police arrived, they were met with a horrifying sight. 6 bodies were sprawled throughout the house. His father, mother, and 4 younger siblings, all shot dead in their sleep. Ronald claimed an intruder had broken in and slaughtered his family. But his story was riddled with inconsistencies. How could a burglar execute an entire household without waking anyone? Why were there no signs of forced entry? And most damning of all, why was the murder weapon found so close to Ronald himself? Under pressure, he finally confessed. He had killed his own family. No clear motive. His story constantly changed. At times, he claimed he was possessed. At others, he blamed years of abuse. The truth remained elusive. But one fact was certain. Ronald DeFeo Jr. was sentenced to 6 life terms in prison. On March 12, 2021, he died behind bars. But his story never faded. Because the house where the massacre took place became the infamous setting for the Amityville Horror. A story that continues to terrify audiences worldwide. 11. Robert and Michael Bever, the brothers who killed for notoriety. July 22, 2015. Broken Arrow, Oklahoma. A frantic 911 call came from a terrified 12-year-old boy. His voice trembled as he begged for help, but before he could say more, the line went dead. When officers arrived, they uncovered a bloodbath. A family slaughtered inside their own home. David Bever, 54. April Bever, 45. Their 3 young children, Daniel, Christopher, and Victoria, all brutally murdered with knives. The killers? Their own sons. Robert Bever, 18, and his younger brother Michael, 16. There was no reason. No history of abuse. No financial struggles. They killed simply because they wanted to. Robert had spent months planning the massacre, fantasizing about becoming a legendary serial killer. Michael, though younger, followed his brother without hesitation. But their perfect plan unraveled when their 13-year-old sister survived the attack. Despite her injuries, she managed to escape and alert the police. That same night, both brothers were arrested. In court, Robert was sentenced to life without parole. Michael, being a minor, received life with a chance of parole after 38 years. They had dreamed of fame, of being remembered as notorious killers. Instead, they became just another cautionary tale of senseless violence and shattered families. 12. Joel Michael Guy Jr., the son who dissolved his parents. November 26, 2016. Knoxville, Tennessee. Concerned co-workers of Lisa Guy made a welfare call. She and her husband, Joel Guy Sr., had missed their Thanksgiving gathering, something entirely out of character. When police arrived at their home, they uncovered a scene of pure horror. Blood stained the floors. Body parts were scattered. A strong chemical odor filled the air. The killer? Their own son, Joel Michael Guy Jr., 28 years old. A man-child who had never worked a day in his life, leeching off his parents for years. When they finally decided to cut him off financially, he decided they had to die. He attacked them with a knife in a brutal frenzy. But he didn't stop there. He dismembered their bodies, placing their remains in plastic bins filled with chemicals in an attempt to dissolve them. It was a methodical, cold-blooded plan, except he left behind one crucial piece of evidence. A notebook. Inside, a detailed step-by-step plan outlining how he would kill, dismember, and dispose of his parents. Every action meticulously documented. His trial in 2020 was swift. The evidence was overwhelming. The verdict? Life in prison without parole. Joel Michael Guy Jr. killed for money, hoping to rid himself of his parents and live freely. But instead, he now rots in a prison cell, forever stripped of the freedom he so desperately craved. 13. Suzane von Richthofen, the heiress who killed for love. São Paulo, Brazil. Halloween night, October 31, 2002. Suzane von Richthofen, 19 years old, was the daughter of a wealthy family. Beautiful, intelligent, with a promising future. But there was one thing she didn't have: her parents' approval of her relationship. Manfred and Marizia von Richthofen forbade her from being with Daniel Kravenius, a man with no status, no future. And for that, they had to die. Suzane didn't kill them herself. She orchestrated the plan. She and her boyfriend, Daniel Kravenius, along with his brother, Christian, waited until her parents were asleep. Then, the Kravenius brothers entered the bedroom, armed with iron bars, and began their attack. The couple never had a chance to fight back. They were beaten to death right in their own bed. Afterward, Suzane and her accomplices staged the scene to look like a robbery. But the police weren't fooled. There were no signs of forced entry. Nothing valuable was stolen. And most suspicious of all, Suzane's reaction was disturbingly unnatural. Under questioning, she changed her story multiple times. Days later, she and the Kravenius brothers were arrested. The trial shocked all of Brazil. Suzane was sentenced to 39 years and 6 months in prison. But after just 17 years, she was granted parole. In 2020, she was officially released. Today, she lives under a different name, trying to erase her past. But Brazil will never forget the heiress who planned her parents' brutal murder. 14. Chandler Halderson, the liar who killed to cover his tracks. Wisconsin, July 7, 2021. Bart and Krista Halderson were proud of their son, Chandler Halderson, 23. He told them he was about to graduate from college. He told them he had a great job at a major company. But it was all a lie. He had never graduated. He had never been employed. And soon, his web of lies was about to collapse. On July 1st, Bart asked Chandler to go to the university and verify his graduation status. Chandler knew he couldn't keep up the facade any longer. So, he decided his parents couldn't live another day. He shot his father at home. When his mother returned, he killed her too. Then, he dismembered their bodies and scattered the remains in different locations, hoping to erase all traces of his crime. But he wasn't as smart as he thought. Police found disturbing searches on his computer. How to dismember a body, how to hide remains, how to erase evidence. They found the scattered body parts. Every piece of his gruesome crime fell into place. In 2022, his trial ended with a life sentence, no parole. He killed to conceal his lies. But now, there's nothing left to hide. 15. Tyler Hadley, the teen who killed his parents and threw a party. July 16, 2011, Port St. Lucie, Florida. A house party. More than 60 guests. Laughter, music, celebration. No one knew that in a bedroom just down the hall, 2 bodies lay hidden. Blake and Mary Jo Hadley. The parents of 17-year-old Tyler Hadley. Just hours earlier, they had been alive. But Tyler had taken a hammer and bludgeoned them to death. Then, he covered their bodies with a blanket, cleaned up the blood as best as he could, and opened the doors for his friends to arrive. Throughout the night, he partied like nothing had happened. He even bragged to his best friend about the murders. At first, no one believed him. Until he led a friend to the bedroom, and showed him the corpses. Blood soaking through the sheets. The next morning, police received an anonymous tip. When they arrived, they found Tyler, emotionless, showing no remorse. No tears. No guilt. During the trial, he was sentenced to life without parole. Later, the sentence was modified. He would be eligible for parole after 25 years. A teenager who murdered his parents just to throw a party. A crime that can never be forgiven. 16. David Kozák, the Prague mass shooter. December 21, 2023. Prague, Czech Republic. A man entered Charles University. He carried a gun. He opened fire. Within minutes, 14 people were dead. 22 were injured. But before this massacre, he had already killed his father. David Kozák, 24 years old. A loner. A man consumed by hatred for the world. He had no friends, no close relationships, only his own twisted thoughts. For months, he planned. He collected weapons. He chose his targets. And when the day arrived, he executed his plan. He walked into the university, surrounded by students and faculty going about their daily lives. He raised his gun. He didn't say a word. He simply started shooting. Police swarmed the scene. But before they could stop him, he turned the gun on himself. No one could ask him why. No one could understand what was going through his mind. Only the numbers remained, 14 lives lost to a madman. One day before Christmas, Prague was left not with festive lights and celebrations, but with mourning, grief, and questions that would never have answers. 16 names. 16 tragedies. 16 shocking crimes. They were once children in a family, but greed, hatred, and madness turned them into killers. They brutally took the lives of those who gave them life, believing they could get away with it, but justice never leaves a crime unpunished. Some were sentenced to life in prison. Some were caught red-handed. Some took their own lives to escape judgment. But no matter the outcome, the scars they left behind will never fade. What do you think about these cases? What could drive someone to murder their own family? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you found this story compelling, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss more true crime stories like this.